deserve any blame for this loss? Talk to me.
Well, first of all, thank everybody for being out here. I appreciate this. Appreciate y'all so much. And as much as this is about HBCUs, today is about this man right here, arguably the greatest tight end in the history of football, a Hall of Famer. You know, and I know it means a lot to him, and I'm happy to be a part of it, my brother. Let me say this. When we look at Dak Prescott and the performance that he had yesterday, Molly, Shannon, obviously stepping out of bounds before you get in. I mean, you know, you got these big boys going at you. You sit up there and you rush and you step out of bounds. If he was pigeon-toed, as Ryan Clark would say it, he wouldn't have stepped out of bounds, right? But that's what happened, and so you got to look at it from that perspective. But I will tell you this, I don't blame him. I thought that he played a great game. Dak Prescott stepped up. He showed what he was capable of. You still have to finish the deal in moments. You can't take that sack that he took, that 11-yard sack, for a loss, particularly at that pivotal moment. There's no doubt about that. But I also look at it from this perspective. Where's your running game? Tony Pollard hasn't had a 100-yard rushing game since the opening of the season. What about Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks and how inefficient that they were? It was about CeeDee Lamb yesterday with his nearly 200 yards receiving on 11 receptions. But in the end, that's what you had. There were a plethora of people that didn't show up. What about the clock management on the part of Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys? The penultimate possession where they're lollygagging around, not running up to the line of scrimmage, not recognizing the urgency of the clock and how it's winding down. And ultimately, you get the football with a limited amount of time left because you didn't prioritize things a little bit earlier in that fourth quarter when you had an opportunity to. All of those things are things that I look at, and the reason I bring it up, Shannon, is because that is what people have lamented about the Cowboys. It hasn't been their talent.
Right.
It hasn't been them being devoid of playmakers. It's them not seizing the moment, and we usually point to the quarterback, but we also pointed to penalties. We also pointed to clock management. We pointed to people other than, CeeDee Lamb not stepping up. We pointed to the absence of that bell cow, that running back behind. The fact that we're able to point to those things as contributors to the loss, combined with Dak Prescott throwing 3 touchdowns, getting hit 10 times, getting sacked 5 times, still throwing for 374 yards, I don't think this is the day for me to say it's on Dak.
This is why I'm going to disagree with you, because playing the quarterback position is about moments. That 374 doesn't mean a hill of beans, because he had several opportunities to do what? To cash out. And that's what we've kept saying about Dak Prescott. In moments when we ask him to be big, he's come up small. He had an opportunity to get the ball into the end zone. It didn't happen. He settled for a field goal. He stepped out of bounds on a 2-point conversion. If you look at all the other quarterbacks, Mahomes or Burrow or all the greats, they've had moments. You can play bad. The one thing I noticed about quarterbacks, if you go back and study the history, they can play bad, but when they need to rise to the occasion, the game is there for the taking, they'll take it. This was an opportunity for Dak to silence, if only for, in the words of Luther Vandross, if only for one night, he had an opportunity to silence his critics, and he didn't. Now, we can say, oh, he threw for 374, but who's surprised? Sam Howell just threw for 397 and 4 touchdowns and scored 31. So you telling me the Washington Commanders offense is better than the Cowboys?
Yeah, but Shoemaker, is it his fault that Shoemaker goes down on a knee when he catches a touchdown pass, but he goes down on a knee a half inch away from I mean, I can't put something like that on Dak.
But the fact of the matter is that there were several opportunities. He overshot Tolbert in the end zone. He overshot him. He stepped out of bounds. So if he doesn't step out of bounds in a 2-point conversion, now all you need
is a field goal.
Is a field goal to tie it and get it to overtime.
That's right.
That's on him. Those are the plays that define the quarterback. It's the one position that you can change the perception of yourself in a single drive. We look at Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. He played terrible, but he had 5 completions, got him in field goal range, and they win it, and off he went running. And that's what the quarterback position. And we're going to talk about Josh Allen, because he's been living off 2 plays, battling Patrick Mahomes. That was the greatest game we've ever seen, and then beating Patrick Mahomes on a Sunday night. But in order for Dak to get us off his back, well, to get me off his back, is moments like this. Just imagine 374, 3 touchdowns, and a game-winning drive. Even if he doesn't throw a touchdown, Pollard runs it in, or one of the guys running in. Dak Prescott with 374 and a game-winning drive, tell me we're not having a different conversation today.
Yeah, we're having a different conversation. I'll give you that, but I still don't believe it was all on Dak. I think that so many times we've been so critical of Dak, and I've led the charge in that regard, and I'm unapologetically so. But I will say this: there were many, many nights and many days where I could have looked at Dak Prescott and said, "That's on you." This is one of those moments I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel that way.
But at the quarterback position, who had the ball in his hand?
He did. He did. But I also saw the ball in other people's hands, and they didn't close the deal either.
You just told me that he can't take a sack there.
That's right. I agree with that. Now, that's a bad play. No doubt about that. But I see that big boy running after him, and he steps a half an inch out of bounds. I'm like, damn, that could happen.
You can't
dive
do
into
that.
dive into the end zone.
The only team worse in go-to-goal situations, your former team, the Denver Broncos.
We talked about the opening Monday after they beat the Giants. I said, Stephen A., I see a recurring theme. Let's see how it plays out. In goal-to-goal situation, the kick and field goals. I said, kick and field goal gets you beat. Scoring touchdown wins you championship. Now, here's the difference in the ball game. One team went 3 of 3 in the red zone. The other team went 3 of 5. Now, you tell me which one you think won. The team that went 3 for 3. And the Cowboys, until they rectify that red zone situation, they're going to find themselves in these close ball games. And when you least expect it, when you need to get the ball into the end zone and you don't, you're going to end up losing games.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up that right tackle, Terrence Steele, and how he got beat.
Oh, he got beat.
He got beat. I mean, 2 pivotal sacks. It was his fault.
It wasn't nothing Steele about him. It was Terrence Paper. Because they tore him up.
There you go.
Do you think the Cowboys should feel encouraged or discouraged by the loss? They hung in that game.
Discouraged, because here we are again. It's deja vu. You had an opportunity to win this game, Swagu. These are the moments that we've asked Dak to rise to the occasion. In moments like this, against teams like this, why would you be encouraged? You lost. I can see if you had a game-ending drive and you won the ball game. Now I'm really encouraged because you know what? I did it on the biggest stage in the biggest moments. But we have yet to see Dak do this on a consistent basis. And this is why all the questions keep arising. Because when we've asked Dak to be at his absolute best, finish this day off. You had an outstanding day, 344 passing yards, 3 touchdowns.
For you.
30 more than what I gave him credit. 30 more than I gave him credit for. Finish it off with a game-ending drive and get out of there, and now you control the division because you've gone to Philly and beat them in their building.
Okay. Go ahead, Swag.
Well, let's just throw all that stuff I said to Shannon out the window because we about to have our first fight on first take. listen, man. I get it, and I love you to death. But here's the thing. I walked away from this one actually saying this is the first one I can't put at Ford's feet. This is the first opportunity that I've had to say that he was absolutely the reason why the Dallas Cowboys had a chance to win this game. And two, like, when you trying to make plays, right? Like, we throw a pass on a rub route. That's a great play by Dak, who's under pressure, puts the ball in a great location, and you don't get in the end zone. Let's give Brandon Graham some credit for chasing him down when he's trying to get into the end zone. I know a lot of people, you did this at the highest level. Your bust is in Canton. You got a gold jacket. And you know sometimes when you're trying to make a play, it just doesn't work out. There wasn't a time in this game last night outside of one situation where I said Dak could have done something better. And that's when he had Ferguson wide open in the middle of the field on that critical 4th down that they didn't convert. If you want to kill him for that, I'm with you, because CeeDee Lamb and Ferguson was the guys that he was going to early in this game that was giving him some explosivity. But outside of that, he's the reason they were in the game. They went in with a 17-14 lead in the halftime. The defense, unfortunately, gave up 2 touchdowns to a really good Philly football team. Now, the last possession of the game, you get a false start. The delay of game, to me, is on Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott. When you don't down the football after the sack, that's on Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy. But when we start talking about playmaking and the opportunities that he gave his team to have a chance to win this game, I can't lay that at the feet of Ford. And Stephen A. knows this. I'm as critical of Dak in moments as much as anybody. As much as I love the Cowboys, I'm going to always be honest about him. Last night was not a Dak Prescott issue.
Swag, but think about this. You said he was the reason why they were in the game. Doesn't he need to be the reason why they win the game? How many times have you said Dak played well enough for them to win the game? At the end of the day, you're paying $40+ million. He's got to deliver us.
I feel you on that, Shannon, but my point is this. If you're right, if we don't get to point to the false starts, if we don't get to point to the penalties, if we don't get to point to a wide receiver or a tight end and Shoemaker that comes down with his knee a half inch away from the end zone, if we don't get to point to those things, you're right. You're totally right. But the problem is there were abundance of things that we saw transpiring. The lack of a running game, 2 receivers that were no-shows because CeeDee Lamb was getting all the touches, okay? The tight end and what I just explained happened. The clock management issues that we've been lamenting since Mike McCarthy arrived.
Yes.
You gotta remember, the penalties that we were talking about, these are the kind of things we've been going on for years and years and years. And oh, by the way, 54% of the time they're passing, 46% of the time they're running the football. I thought that Mike McCarthy needed Kellen Moore going so he could bring more balance to the offense. That isn't happening either. So I'm looking at all of those things pointing in a different direction, and then I'm looking at Micah Parsons and the rest of the crew saying, yo, we good with Dak. Dak showed up. We ain't worried about him right now based on what we're seeing. And I take that seriously because we both know they had some trepidation about that brother coming into this season.